Russian leader reveals China's concern over Ukraine. U.S. Senate to boost ties with Taiwan. UN chief and Putin discuss exporting fertilizer. Singapore to create 20,000 finance jobs. Armed customers rob banks to get their own money in Lebanon. Roger Federer set to retire. Ukraine President Zelensky involved in a car crash. Patagonia's billionaire boss gives company away.
Hello, I'm Johnny. Thank you for joining us on FUNDAY News. It's Friday, September 16th, and here are your top stories. Vladimir Putin has acknowledged China's concern over Ukraine in his first face-to-face talks with President Xi Jinping since the Russian invasion. But speaking in Uzbekistan, Putin also thanked China for its balanced position. She said China was willing to work together with Russia as great powers. The two leaders' comments come days after Russia suffered a series of major military setbacks in Ukraine. Russian troops are retreating en masse, having lost more territory in a week than they captured in 5 months.
On Thursday, when meeting Chinese leader Xi Jinping in person for the first time since the invasion at a regional summit in Uzbekistan, Putin said in an opening speech of the meeting, "We highly appreciate the balanced position of our Chinese friends in connection with the Ukrainian crisis. We understand your questions and concern in this regard." During today's meeting, of course, we will explain in detail our position on this issue, although we have spoken about this before.
The U.S. Foreign Relations Senate Committee on Wednesday approved legislation that would significantly enhance U.S. military support for Taiwan, including provisions for billions of dollars in additional security assistance, as China increases military pressure on the democratically governed island. The Senate Foreign Relations Committee backed the Taiwan Policy Act of 2022 with a vote of 17-1, despite the Biden administration's concerns about the bill due to potentially angering Beijing.
Sponsors said the bill would be the most comprehensive restructuring of U.S. policy towards the island since the Taiwan Relations Act of 1979, when Washington opened up relations with Beijing that year. The bill would allocate $4.5 billion in security assistance for Taiwan over 4 years and support its participation in international organizations. The act also includes extensive language on sanctions towards China in the event of hostilities across the strait, separating it from the mainland.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said he spoke to Russian President Vladimir Putin on Wednesday about exporting Russian fertilizer through Ukraine's Black Sea ports to address a growing global food crisis. The Secretary General said high prices for fertilizers have already reduced the planting of food crops. Therefore, the UN finds it critical to increase Russian exports of ammonia. Currently, talks are taking place on the possibility of shipping fertilizers through the Black Sea ports, which are currently being used to ship grain from Ukraine.
The AP reported despite the July 22nd deal to start shipping Ukrainian grain from Black Sea ports and to get Russian food and fertilizers to global markets, Guterres said, "There is a risk of multiple famines this year." Guterres said he discussed the dramatic situation in fertilizers and the obstacles to shipping ammonia from Russia with Putin. The UN chief said, "We have news from different parts of the world that the areas cultivated are much smaller than in the previous cycle, which means that we risk in 2022 the real lack of food."
Singapore aims to add as many as 20,000 finance jobs over 5 years as the government seeks to bolster areas including wealth management and sustainable financing. The Asian financial hub is projected to add 3,000 to 4,000 net roles on average every year during 2021 to 2025, while the financial sector will grow by 4% to 5% per year in the plan unveiled Thursday by the Monetary Authority of Singapore, also known as the MAS. The MAS will work with the financial industry to deepen capabilities in asset classes.
MAS said Singapore exceeded the targets set in its previous 5-year plan ending in 2020, having created more than 20,000 jobs while attracting $2.56 billion in total fintech investments. It said the country's political stability attracts wealthy individuals from all over the world. The financial sector accounts for 14% of the country's gross domestic product, in which Singapore plays a key regional or global role in areas including foreign exchange and private capital markets.
Two desperate Lebanese depositors held up banks on Wednesday to force access to their own money. A source from a depositors advocacy group said one woman with a gun and some associates briefly held hostages at a branch of Blom Bank in the capital Beirut before leaving with more than $13,000 in cash from her account. Shortly afterwards, in the mountain city of LA, an armed man entered a Bankmate branch and retrieved some of his trapped savings before handing himself into authorities.
Set the bank branch on fire if they do not get access to their savings. Their money, the Lebanese, their money has been trapped in banks since late 2019.
The media said that Lebanon's banks have locked most depositors out of their savings since an economic crisis took hold 3 years ago, leaving much of the population unable to pay for basic necessities. BLOM Bank said a customer and accomplices arrived with a gun, threatened to set people on fire, and forced the branch manager and treasurer to bring money from a safe. Before going into hiding, the woman, Salih Hafiz, told local news channel Al Hadid TV the gun was a toy and that she needed the money for her sister's cancer treatment.
Roger Federer, regarded by many as the greatest male player to wield a tennis racket and who took the sport to new heights during a career spanning more than 2 decades, will retire after next week's Laver Cup in London. The 41-year-old, who won 20 Grand Slam singles titles and redefined the sport with his artistry and grace, broke the news to tennis fans across the world in a lengthy statement on Thursday. Federer says he knows his body's capacities and limits.
A knee injury meant he has not played a match since losing at last year's Wimbledon, although many still hoped he could make a comeback for one last golden farewell. However, Federer said in an 845-word statement posted on social media that his age had finally caught up with him. As many of you know, the past 3 years have presented me with challenges in the form of injuries and surgeries. The Laver Cup next week in London will be my final ATP event. I will play more tennis in the future, of course, but just not in Grand Slams or on the tour.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky was reported involved in a car accident in Kyiv on Wednesday. His spokesman wrote on Facebook that Zelensky had no serious injuries from the collision. According to the statement cited by CNN and other news outlets, a car collided with the car of the president of Ukraine and escort vehicles. Medics with Zelensky provided the driver with emergency aid and transferred him to an ambulance. The president was examined by a doctor and no serious injuries were found.
Britain was not the only country today where solemn ceremony.
The media reported that law enforcement officials are investigating the incident. Earlier on Wednesday, Zelensky visited the newly liberated city of Izum in Kharkiv. Ukraine recaptured the city from Russia 5 days prior. The Ukrainian president sang the national anthem and was photographed raising his country's flag over a city administrative building during a ceremony in the main square. Zelensky said, "Our blue-yellow flag is already flying in the deoccupied Izum, and it will be so in every Ukrainian city and village."
The billionaire founder of the outdoor fashion retailer Patagonia says he has given away his company to a charitable trust. Yvon Chouinard said that under a new ownership structure, any profit not reinvested in running the business would go to fighting climate change. He claimed this will amount to around $100 billion a year, depending on the health of the company. Patagonia was founded in 1973. Its estimated revenue was $1.5 billion this year, while Mr. Chouinard's net worth is thought to be $1.2 billion.
And one billionaire fashion retailer is giving away his company to charity.
The media reported that the Californian firm was already donating 1% of its annual profits to grassroots activists and was committed to sustainable practices. Chouinard said he had initially considered selling Patagonia and donating the money to charity or taking the company public, but he said both options would have meant giving up control of the business. Even public companies with good intentions are under too much pressure to create short-term gain at the expense of long-term vitality and responsibility.
FUNDAY News will help you sharpen your English skills and keep you informed about international current events. If you want to know more about our other programs and keep learning about the world's most important topics in English, please click the link in the description below to join FUNDAY for free. I'm Johnny Wu, your host. I will see you next time.